Okay, so one of the ways that many abusers and unsafe people manipulate their victims is by saying, "Don't you trust me?" And basically, they're setting up a false equivalency that if you do not extend them trust that they haven't earned, that you are saying in total that they are not a trustworthy person. And then because the victim is a person who wants to be fair and just, they want to be good, ethical, moral people, and they think, well, I don't want to say that about this person. I wouldn't be here if I didn't think that they were a good, trustworthy person. So I'll go ahead and extend them this trust they haven't earned. And by doing so, the victim unintentionally puts themselves into a major bind, where they've now allowed this abuser or this unsafe person access to them or things they're responsible for without any of the guardrails and boundaries that should be there. And so, first of all, you can not extend someone trust because they haven't earned it with you specifically and still think they're a trustworthy person, because you wouldn't be there in the first place if you didn't think that there was at least the possibility that they were trustworthy, or that they were more likely to be trustworthy than not. So these two things are not the same. Secondly, trustworthy people, safe people, they recognize that you have no idea really that they are a safe or trustworthy person, and that they would want you to go through the process to establish safety and trust, because that is what will give you safety, them safety. It creates more safety. So because they're a safe person, because they're a trustworthy person, they're not going to actually want you to bypass safety guardrails all in the name of trust. They're going to want you to put those guardrails into place. They're going to want you to do the things that basically would take care of yourself or look out for your own interests. So for example, let's say you are getting married to somebody and there's discussion of a prenuptial agreement. And this is a process that is often misused by abusers, but also like a safe person is going to say, no, 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 no. Even though I have a lot more money and premarital assets to protect, I want to make sure that you're taken care of. So I'm going to pay for you to have your own attorney. And that attorney is going to advocate for you. They have already been paid for. You are their client. That means your interests are the interests they're advocating for. And then also within the prenuptial agreement, I'm going to set it up in a way that is fair. So it's not for the benefit of one person at the expense of the other. A safe person going through this process is going to recognize things like, if someone ends up being a stay-at-home parent taking care of children, that they're going to be compensated, because that is legitimately labor that is important not only for the development of their children, but just is recognizably something that should be rewarded and compensated for. So when you see a safe person set up a prenuptial agreement, it's very different than the way that an unsafe person sets up a prenuptial agreement. The unsafe person is just going to be like, I got an attorney for both of us and you don't have any rights. And it's going to be a one-way unilateral document at your expense for my benefit, because I have all these assets I want to protect. So I'm going into a marriage with you, but I don't want to risk any of my assets, right? So not only will you never have, you don't have access to them, and you will never have access to them. Whereas like a fair prenuptial agreement might say, if we've been married for, I don't know, 20, 30 years or something, we move out of the prenuptial phase of the marriage into a marital sharing asset phase. Potentially. I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying that can be a way something like that is set up. So anyway, you have a person and they want you to let them drive their car. Or drive your car. They want you to let them move into your home or to your apartment. They want you to give them money. They basically want something that is not reasonable for a person at that level of relationship to be expecting. So what they do then is they shift it. Well, don't you trust me? Well, don't you love me? If you love me, wouldn't you do this, right? So when we say the early love bombing or the early L word in a relationship, unsafe people always mean it in terms of the emotional intensity. They always mean it in terms of the love feeling, not actual love. Actual love guards everybody. Actual love is safe. Actual love does not mean you can't say no, that you are not a steward of your own things, and that you have to basically give everything away to people. Now, Whenever you see discussions, either in self help or therapy, or let's say spiritual or religious, some people are selfish and they need the messages that are about, hey, don't be so selfish. That's their development. That's their development path. So those messages are there for those people. Other people are often so conditioned to just never think that they're entitled to anything and to give everything away. They think that that's what love means. And the messages for those people are, hey, you get to be a person too. You get to have things. You get to be a steward of the things that are put into your hands that you're responsible for. And you get to say no. So people will sit there and use the you have to be unselfish stuff for these people. And then they will use the, oh, you get to be a person and, more center yourself. Then they use that for themselves. So essentially, victims, targets, people that are being manipulated by others are always put in that one down position. They never get to say no. They never get to center themselves, right? You can always see that it's rules for thee, but not for me. Is basically the how it breaks down. It's politics, it's spiritual, it's therapy. Pick a domain, it's the same. So when you switch to a safety orientation, you switch to going, oh, I get to choose how the things that I'm responsible for are used because I'm responsible for their safety. And also those things help keep me safe. And then like a selfish person, they're coming in because they want more things than they should have access to. And they don't get to do that. So whenever you're dealing with people and they're coming in with concepts, you have to first think, okay, how self-aware is this person that I'm dealing with? Like, what's their level of emotional intelligence? What is their capacity to actually be a reasonable person? And if they don't have that capacity, it does not matter what are the words that are coming out of their mouth, because regardless of whether or not they're accurate or possibly accurate in certain circumstances, you can 100% know that they do not know the appropriate way to use these tools and concepts, and therefore trusting them is not in your best interest. Go find an adult. One of the attorneys I used to work with, whenever he needed to consult with the other managing partners, he'd say, like, I need some adult supervision. He's not saying I'm not an adult, but he's saying, let's get other people in who know about other things I might not know about. And let's get together and confab. And I'm going to get some other informed perspectives from safe people that I trust. Now, let's talk about trust. Okay. This is a chicken and the egg situation. People are like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? How do you have an egg until you have a chicken? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. When things evolve, it evolves both things at the same time. As the chicken evolves more into a chicken, the eggs it lays become more like a chicken. And so then the next generation is more a chicken, which lays more of a chicken egg. So you went from, the reptiles, or actually more dinosaurs. You went from the dinosaurs over time, you get to chickens, but it's not like one has to come first. It co-evolves at the same time. Both things are present. So when it comes to trust, you have a trustworthy person who is acting in trustworthy ways, who is demonstrating that they are a trustworthy person. Therefore, you can extend them more trust. As you extend them more trust, they show they are responsible with that trust that you have extended, and therefore you can extend them more trust. And so it's built over time. Anybody who comes in and wants to remove the element of time from whatever it is, and then make you make a decision, a static decision that you can never change, immediately you should be thinking that through. That's most likely not somebody who's looking out for your best interests. I want you to make a promise, and then I'm going to stand on your promise that I coerced you into making so that you can never, ever put boundaries on me or say no. That is not a safe person. That is not a trustworthy person. That's someone who's used the language and framework of trust, which does exist in healthy relationships, to maneuver the relationship to a place where now you are trapped and they have all the benefits at your expense. It's like these software programs that were great. They started off being great, and you're like, oh, I love the software program. And you and everybody else signs up for the software program. And maybe they even have Maybe they're a company that says something like, "Oh, our mission is don't be evil," or whatever it is. So everyone thinks, it's safe to sign up with this company. They have a great product. I'm going to do the thing. Awesome. Well, now it's been, 10, 20 years of so many people using the product. And maybe you have a different group of people at the head of the company, or maybe you have the same group. And they go, well, we have this captive audience that we can just make them, as we update the terms and services, and they just click the little button, and now we've updated it. Now we get to sell their information to third-party people, and we've got another revenue stream. Or, let's move this to a subscription model. They've now built their whole lives around it. And if they don't have access to it, their entire life falls apart, every system they've ever created. So now we have them essentially trapped, and now we can extract resources. That's an abuse dynamic, just as it is in a relationship where someone presented themselves to you in a way, or changed the terms and conditions on the relationship as you went through them, or stood on relationship concepts that aren't present in the relationship dynamic to get you to say and do things that they can then use as proof that if you don't follow through with what they say you should follow through on, that you're now a terrible bad person, or a bad partner, or a bad friend, or a bad child, blah, 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 whatever. Okay. The systems that are the healthiest systems are the systems that preserve our individuality in the context of safety. And it is sometimes hard to thread those needles. But pledging allegiance to a system that then becomes an unsafe system, that's a trap. Pledging allegiance to a person who says that they're an unsafe person, right? But they're presenting like they're a safe person, and that if you don't pledge allegiance to them in whatever way they say you should, that's also a trap. So the way to not get into this dynamic, or to not stay in the dynamic, is to recognize when your individual ability to choose starts to get chipped away. When someone is saying that you don't get to make a choice, because if not, emotional language here, emotionally manipulative language, right? Then that we're being emotionally manipulative. Intrinsically, it doesn't matter what the outcome is, you're now not being a safe person. As always, though, I could conceive of a situation where you need to be emotionally manipulative to get your kids out, so that you can get out and be safe because you're responsible for the children. So I'm not saying never. We're just looking at broad trends. Another thing, while I'm at it, anytime anybody gets hung up on a system. Okay, so for example, let's say you want to lose weight, and you've got people that are like, keto's the thing. You need keto. Keto's what you need to do. And you go, okay, well, I'll try keto. And you lose a bunch of weight on keto, but then maybe you start having medical problems. And the keto people who pledge it's their religion. You can't ever leave keto, because if you leave keto, you're saying keto is bad. Therefore, you can't say that you're leaving keto, because our religion is that keto is not bad. Keto saves lives. It's there's no concept of, you know what? Keto worked here, but isn't working for me anymore. So let me do this other thing. Maybe I need some roughage. Maybe I need some more fiber. Maybe I need to add some more whole foods into my diet. Or maybe you went too all in on the vegan thing, and it was great at first, and now you're like, oh no, but I think I need to adjust, right? But now you've pledged allegiance to these moral concepts, or you've pledged allegiance to this diet, this way of life. So these things that can be good tools end up being little jails that end up imprisoning people and harming them. And so anytime you have someone who's absolutely insistent on if you don't do this, then you're a bad person. This is the system. If you don't do the system, you're wrong. That's going to be a no. And there's a reason why. Whenever I'm doing videos or writing, it's generally almost never, if you don't do this, then you will never get out of an abuse dynamic. If you don't do this, you'll never heal. We are people who exist in time. We're people who exist in time and who get to make choices. And therefore, something that works at one point may not work at another, or something that doesn't work here may work here. If we don't have an adaptive model of what works for every single individual person, then we are removing the individuality from the people. The whole point of that I don't get to be abused. I don't get to be trapped in this relationship dynamic. I don't get to be made into a slave or a servant. Is that you are a person who gets to choose, and that you get to choose over time. And also, you never know how the ineffable is going to work in somebody's life. So, let's say it's your subconscious. You're accessing your subconscious through your gut, your instinct, right? And so then you're like, oh, let me make a choice. Okay, this seems right. I'll do this. Well, maybe it's not a program. Maybe it's you see something and you're like, oh, let me try this, and it works. And then maybe at some point it doesn't work, and you do a different thing. Right? So whether or not that's subconscious, whether or not that's like a deity you're working with, whether or not it's your Christian or whatever framework it is that you live in that works for you, that is how you explain the world, like to yourself, then you will be moved towards, if it's healthy, you'll be moved towards trusting. It's like that small inner voice, that little voice. It's not overpowering, So in whatever dimension it is that voice exists in for you, that voice is often going to be the voice that's going to be helping you make decisions. And why? Because it's not overpowering you. It's giving you information that you get to make a choice about. That's how important our ability to choose is. Anyone who's trying to take that choice away from you is somebody who's not a safe person. And anyone who's standing on rules or a moral framework to take that away from you is someone to be very, very, very cautious of. And that's why, in my opinion, anybody who's doing abuse work, your job is not to set yourself up over another person as a guru. Your job is to help empower people so they can make better decisions for themselves. So you give them information, you give them tools, but you don't necessarily say, hey, this is what's going to get you out. Because let me tell you, I've seen, honey, I just like one more minute. I've seen different methods work for people. One person might hear, baby girl, one person might hear, don't you realize how pathetic this is, that you're in this situation being used by this person? And they hear that and they go, oh my gosh. Oh, I am being pathetic. Oh, I don't want to be pathetic. And you know what? Absolutely not. And then that in turn, somehow that just starts with them on the inside where they go, oh, I got to make changes. Where a different person, they hear that and that's just a continuation of the abuse. Same tool doesn't work the same on everybody. Or maybe it works one way on somebody at one point and then later maybe it works in a different way. So as always, when you are trying to figure out like, okay, is this a safe person? Can I trust them? That is a synergistic process that happens over time. And also they can change. It doesn't mean once you've determined they're a safe person, it doesn't mean they're a safe person forever. It means they're choosing to be a safe person right now and hopefully in the foreseeable future. But you can't sit there and go, oh, and now I know for decades they're going to be a safe person no matter what. Sometimes we all need a little adult supervision to help us make our better choices. And that is why healthy relationships that stay healthy often have a community around the couple. Or friendships where the friendship stays safe. Often it's set in a community where people generally are self-aware and not selfish and have low emotional intelligence. Anyway, I hope this makes sense. And I'll talk to you next time.